Welcome to Suffolk Matters, where all of Suffolk County meets the men and women of Suffolk AME. News, opinions, and insights you won't hear anywhere else. Here's your host, the president of New York's largest independent union, Suffolk AME's Dan Leveler.
Welcome to another edition of Suffolk Matters on Walk 97.5 and 94.3 The Shark, where Suffolk County meets the men and women of Suffolk AME. News and views you can't hear anywhere else. So my guest this morning is Dominick Thorne. He represents the 7th Legislative District, and thank you for taking some time to meet with us today.
Sure.
So, I guess we could probably start just, there's a lot that you do, right? And it encompasses a lot. But let's just start with the 7th Legislative District. Tell us a little bit about what that district is.
So I have proudly, by the way, have a very diverse district. I go all the way from Blue Point to Bellport, north, south, every part of Bellport, all of Patchogues, of course, in between, most of Medford, all of Gordon Heights community, and a big old chunk of Fire Island.
Right.
So it's a really kind of diverse kind of area with different neighborhoods having different needs.
Yeah, I think that's great, by the way. It is a lot of work, but then you get a lot of input, and you get it from a lot of different folks. And so when it comes to, drilling down on an issue, you've got a diversity of thought coming your way to help you kind of sort through what it is you're working on.
Well, one of the things that I always said from day one is everybody deserves a voice. I am everybody's legislator, regardless of who voted for me, who didn't vote for me, who don't plan to vote for me.
Right.
They're part of my community, and my job is to serve them. And I make it a point to get out into the communities to actually talk to the folks and see how a particular thing. And one of the things about government does that I don't like is they tell people what is good for their neighborhood. When you really want to be listening to what's good for the neighborhood from the folks in the neighborhoods and acting on that.
Yeah.
So we do a lot of community outreach in every demographic, every neighborhood, all of the time. I clock myself at about 80 hours a week as a normal week for me. But I love every second of it. I'm very blessed to have the job, so we do good stuff.
Yeah, and I think it's lost sometimes on people when someone gets elected, whether you voted for them or not. 9 times out of 10, these races aren't like a 90-10 kind of percentage race. Like it usually hangs between 40, 50%, whatever. So there's always that diversity. And then after the fact, it's incumbent on you to ignore politics in a sense and just find out what's going on. What do people need? What is their perspective on an issue? So I think that's important in every district, and you most certainly your district epitomizes that.
It's wildly important that everybody feels like they have a voice, but I have incredible people in my district, in every neighborhood, that do a great job and monitor their neighborhoods, and be involved in the day-to-day of what's going to happen in their block and their town with their neighbors. And that is like such a blessing for me as a public official to have that kind of diversity and be able to speak to everybody and be welcome in every forum.
Right.
And we may not agree, but we can have a conversation. Their voice can be heard, and that's widely important to me.
That's very important. And listen, you've got a wealth of experience behind you. But let's just get into a little bit of your background and experience with Suffolk County government.
I had a large background in private sector as well as in emergency services. For 27 years, I was with fire rescue and emergency services, in my local fire departments and ambulance squads, responded to calls. But I also, conversely, at the same time, did have a background in running auto repair shops, fixing cars. There's very little that I won't do. And often people find that a surprise that, they'd be working on their car, and I'd go to talk to them, and I'd say, well, hold on, let me give you a hand with that.
Yeah.
And they kind of look at you funny that you're willing to pick up a wrench and help somebody do it.
Right.
There was an incident in Bellport at one of the community days, and a lady's starter had locked up. And I literally crawled under the car and started whacking the starter just to get her home so somebody could fix it. And I was like, what are you doing? I'm
Loosen
like,
up
I'm
that solenoid,
somebody that needs help. And it's kind of cool to give you that kind of diversity.
Well, I think people sometimes assume that anybody involved at your level of government has had a white-collar, insulated life.
Oh, that wouldn't be me.
Yeah, no. So on the mechanical side, that's one thing, and that speaks to your understanding of the world and how things work, right?
Sure.
The technology of things. But additionally, in the paramedic role, being involved in ambulatory work, you have witnessed firsthand people, individuals and families going through some of the worst moments of their life, and you're showing up and saying, hey, I'm calm, I'm cool, I'm collected, I know what to do, I'm going to get you out of this, we're going to work together. And so it's a unique type of person you need to be able to work that job.
It's not for everyone.
Yeah.
Especially if you're not good around blood and guts and emergency situations, but you have to be calm. Keep in mind, like you said, Dan, people are coming to you at the worst point of their life, right? They're calling an ambulance because they need help.
Oh, yeah.
And, in this county, we have amazing, and not to speak just about me, because we have thousands, 11,000 volunteers in this county that every day do that job. And that's an amazing amount of people that do that and show up and give quality care. And I still volunteer today, and very proud to do so.
Yeah.
I try to find some time, but we get some time in because it also keeps you grounded. It keeps you grounded and it keeps you realizing that there are people with more needs and we have to work on those.
Right. And there's nothing more real than being, on that ambulance and responding to a call.
That's correct.
That is, so when you're sitting at legislative meetings and you're talking about things and things can get heated, right? There's different points of view and passion involved in these conversations, but you know life and death, right? And so there is this, again, is something that I have an affinity towards, and it's those people that volunteer. You mentioned those 11,000 volunteers, some of which are my members.
Right.
But they're going out on their time to go help the community, get involved. But they're not, there's something to be said for volunteers in general, right? There's something amazing about that. But to volunteer for things like fire and ambulatory services is really just a special calling because you are putting yourself and therefore your family in risky situations to ensure that you're there for your community. So it's a deed, not a word, right? You talk about being the guy that does this stuff. You're showing up and you're doing it, right?
Right. It's wild. I don't think people understand. We can go back to H1N1 virus. We can go back to COVID.
Right.
We can go back to the bird flu that's popping its head back up.
Yeah.
All of these things endangered the fire EMS worker. It's not just the burning building, and that in itself is enough for praise.
Oh, yeah.
We have incredible firefighters that run into burning buildings where everybody else running out, they're running in and try to save either people or property, to protect life and property.
Yeah.
But and the EMS workers, they are constantly subjected to airborne diseases, and we don't get to say we're not coming. It's dangerous.
Right.
We're coming either way.
Yeah.
With proper PPE and outstanding training.
Right.
But we're coming anyway.
Yeah.
And that's what I don't know if people get that.
Right.
That it's not just our firefighters who do. Again, I don't want to undermine them. They do a great job.
No, yeah.
But at the same time, every one of them endanger themselves and have to go home to their family at some point. Right.
Yeah. And listen, there's a little bit of folks not having that firsthand experience. And so what you get is, what you see in TV shows and movies. Anyone from any house, any situation, anywhere, any location can have an emergency and you're going to respond. So maybe one of the nicest houses in the neighborhood, maybe one of the worst, doesn't matter. What's going on in there. If there's some sort of a dispute between people, like you've got to navigate and mitigate the issues regardless of the situation you're walking into.
There could be danger at the scenes. There could be, just keep in mind, one of their loved ones is very sick. And that makes emotion runs wild. And you have to be the calming force, along with providing the medical care or the firematic response that is needed.
Right. Yeah, no, it's very true. So, I guess that's a good segue into, what motivated you to get involved in public service?
I wasn't in love with what I was saying. One of the things that I'm never in love with is the constant bickering back and forth. You can disagree, but when you promote more conversations and arguments, you are winning. And that's what I wanted to do, bring people together, regardless of their demographics, the language they speak, the place they call home, the political affiliation. Bring people together to make sure that we can have a meaningful conversation, because usually somewhere in the middle is some good middle ground we can all agree on.
Right.
There's not one single person that doesn't want a clean road. There wasn't not one single person that doesn't want their kids to go to good schools. And those are the things we can concentrate that on a county level we can facilitate and make sure we move forward in positive fashion. If you've seen me on the Legend, I know you have.
Yeah.
you don't really hear me raise my voice.
Right.
Because there's no reason to be confrontational. You can give your point and vote the way your heart says to vote without hollering, screaming, or name-calling.
Right.
That's never a good idea.
Yeah, so you can disagree agreeably,
Yep.
right? As the expression goes, right? So, listen. One of your roles as a legislator, one, you're representing your district. Two, when the legislature convenes as a whole, you're dealing with issues that are maybe countywide or even maybe in other districts. But one of the hats you wear is chair of FRES, Fire Rescue Emergency Services, and that includes medical services and the preparedness committee. So let's talk about, you've had some great initiatives there. So let's talk about some of those past successes, and then we can talk about priorities.
So, one of the things we recently did was move emergency medical services from the Department of Health over to Fire Rescue and Emergency Medical Services, Office of Emergency Management, as one entity.
Right.
They are the same in aspect that they're an emergency service, and we have to make sure that we supply our EMS workers. So in this county, Dan, we do 450 to 600 ambulance calls a day, daily. That is a huge amount. So we have to make sure while we're making sure that we have lithium-ion legislation, which we passed last year to protect these unregulated batteries, and make sure that our fire academy last year, we gave $125,000 extra to the fire academy to learn how to fight lithium-ion fires and educate our public, and they did an outstanding job with it.
Yeah.
But we also have to make sure that we put like services together. Now, one entity, and I'll steal the Commissioner Sunderman's phrase, and that's, one team, one purpose.
Right.
And the purpose is emergency medical services, fire medic services, as well as, of course, Office of Emergency Management. And I don't think people know what they do very well.
Yeah, no, that's very true. And, so I think back to something like COVID and, the successes coming out of Fire Rescue Emergency Services, FRES in general, to get PPE out to people and handle, it was just basically this giant distribution network that was going in, and it was handled so efficiently. They had more efficiency stats than, like a company like Amazon had.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And they were moving product all over the place, but things came in, got to where they needed to go, and again, it's the county's acting as an umbrella, as support to everything that's out there. And if that function didn't work, things would have been so much worse in Suffolk County.
You hear about FEMA, you hear about some of these federal agencies, but the fact is that it's all local. Office of Emergency Management, like the floods, that dams broke and people's flooded, it was Office of Emergency Management staff that was out in the street knocking on doors saying, please fill out this flyer. Please fill out this form. This is the FEMA requirement. Now, I don't know if I'm totally happy with FEMA's response to this event, but it was our staff, Suffolk County staff, that were out in the streets talking to taxpayers, making sure they were safe, finding ways to access them if an emergency erupts after roads were washed away and dams broke. That's all Suffolk County employees, and people don't get that.
Right.
It's all our local people doing this work.
Yeah, and as an overview, just a general government concept here, there's folks in your role that help set policy and funding and set certain regulations in place to make sure that things go well. And then there's the day-to-day employees, and they are at their heart altruistic, like the folks we talk about that doing EMS work, like the folks we talk about going into burning buildings. But every function of this government is at the service of the men and women in Suffolk County, whether they live here or visiting, vacationing, whatever. It doesn't, just working here, whatever. All day long, the government function, the day-to-day, everyday people are going out and helping day-to-day, everyday people. Right? So it is, I think, an important distinction. I like to make it as often as possible so that folks remember, when you say the government is here, that's your neighbor. That's your friend. That's your family member. That's somebody that literally took a job.
It's the guy in the bagel store you see Sunday morning when you're getting some bagels.
Right.
That's, these folks, I don't think people get it. And I'm going to go off on a little tangent here. I apologize, but it's something I'm very passionate about. When you drop your kids off at school and it's snowing and pouring and freezing rain and high winds and the crossing guard's standing out there, that's one of our public employees.
Yes.
When you call 911 and you hear 911 it's your emergency, that's our county employees.
Yeah.
When you hear, when you have to reach out to our Friends department and there's a fire or EMS emergency, fire rescue, what is your emergency? They provide medical care on the phone while they're dispatching the call. When the streets are covered and you can't get out to go to your doctor's appointment, get food for your house, whatever, who do you think's plowing the roads? That's a Suffolk County employee taking care of our county roads.
Yeah.
They do an outstanding job every day, and I don't think people understand that safety is so vitally wrapped up in the guy that's your neighbor or the girl, and I shouldn't say just guy
right.
because it's amazing, right? But the guys and the girls of our county employees, our AME employees that are out there providing safety every single day, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year.
Yeah.
The county doesn't close, and as a result, we have great employees that make sure that we protect life and safety out here in Suffolk County.
Yeah, and listen, it's obvious, part of my job is speaking to those employees that you're talking about various different things. And all the time, I get to see you out there and you're having those same conversations. And one of the things I find that comes back in all of these conversations is the sense of pride in a public employee in the fact that they're doing a job that's helping their community.
Right.
Right? It isn't about all of these other things that sometimes come up in conversations, end up in newspaper articles or whatever else. They are part of their identity. So part of their love for themselves and their pride in their family is their pride in their community and the fact that what they do helps people. Yeah.
Right. And what people don't understand, too, is that the folks that work for our county, they are your neighbors. They're in the community. Of course they care about their neighbors. Of course they care about their fellow residents. People miss that sometimes.
Yeah.
They think, it's, just some county worker. No, it's not just some county worker. It
To
doesn't
as
work
like
that way.
Right. They talk, it's the bureaucracy, it's the this,
and
it's
when you
the that.
see things in a lot of the media, you'll see only the negative, not the positive.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, that's one of the reasons why we're here today, right? Making sure that we're having conversations about these good folks and what they do out in the community. So,
Right.
Yeah. So, listen, you work a lot with first responders, right? We've got AME first responders in Frez, police department, probation, sheriff's office, and then there are all the more traditional roles that we've spoken about already, your uniformed officers, detectives, the superior officer, all this other stuff. But all of this is first responder related, right? And it's that first contact with someone in need. So what are some challenges that you see that they're facing now that the county can help?
Well, I know that we're making great strides.
Yeah.
Let's start there. Proper funding for all of our departments is wildly important. We have begun, especially under Ed Romaine, as the county executive, and I say under, but let me be clear, co-equal branch of government, we're the power of the purse. So we are replacing old and damaged equipment. That's a challenge. When you get into a truck and you have no heat, and it's sub-zero temperatures, the road still has to be closed. So we are, addressing our fleet maintenance. We're addressing our parks department. I took a tour last year or a year and a half ago at one of our county parks. And I was pretty sure the truck I was in to go see a waterfront area would not make it back.
Right.
And I said, well, I'm glad I didn't wear a suit. I'm probably going to walk back. But we did make it back, thank goodness. But they should not be working with that equipment. Of course. We're the county of Suffolk. We're not some small community that does not have the resources to do it, but it's all about preventive maintenance too.
Yeah.
And we have to supply them with that. Those are challenges that our county employees meet every day.
Yeah.
I know in our DPW department, they just recently partnered up with a private entity to make sure if somebody comes in and their car needs a certain part or the county vehicle needs to come, that we have a supplier right there.
Right.
And we can hand it over to them and go, here you go, get the truck back on the road, right?
Yeah, responsiveness to the community, right?
So that's important.
Yeah. And I would go a little further, you're talking about equipment, so, there's other resources that are available to make this job, work on behalf of the taxpayer. And sometimes it's facilities itself, physical locations, and sometimes it's staffing, right? And there's a number of initiatives going on right now to address staffing in Suffolk County because I think there is a need.
Yeah. There's currently, and it's taking a little longer than perhaps I would like. I like things done yesterday.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit, but there's salary studies going on and figuring out what our neighbors are getting paid, paying their employee in that particular class. And it's taking a little longer than I expected it to. But it's in progress, and we're going to get there. We just have to do it right.
You have to do it right.
We have to do it right from the get-go because you don't want to just – I'm not about press releases. I'm about action.
Yeah.
You know, you do your job, the press will come on its own.
Right.
But we have to do things right from the get-go.
Sure.
And make sure that we have the study right and that it's done properly, and we have to move that forward.
And really, you want to be competitive in government, right? There is, in the private sector, there's all sorts of different pay ranges and whatever else. I don't think government should be seeking to solve that problem internally that way. But if other governments are doing things in a way that makes it more attractive for the best talent to go somewhere else,
right,
then Suffolk County residents lose out on these important umbrella, again, essential services that people rely on day in and day out. We want the best for the people and the public, and we need to attract the best for the people and the public. So.
And maintain them.
Often
what happens in the county is that we have, talent that comes here, gets the training, and goes somewhere else.
Right.
So we have to keep them here.
Oh, yeah.
And the county executive, the county legislature, we're all on the same page of trying to maintain the folks we have and still attract the new talent coming through the door.
Yeah, absolutely. So, let's talk about challenges in Suffolk County. There's so many things. The news is flooded with worries from coast to coast and outside the country and whatever else. But specifically in Suffolk County, what are some major challenges that we're facing?
Well, there's just so many.
Right.
And I'd be remiss if I didn't say we've put on, I think since I've been in the legislature, we've put on over 600 or 700 police officers.
Yeah.
But that's just keeping above the curb. That's just keeping above the retirement curve.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of superior officers that were out, so we started replacing them too. It is widely important that our emergency services are covered first. That's always a challenge, right? To get and keep the like you said, the talent here.
Yeah.
So that's always a challenge, and that has to come first, Dan. We have to absolutely take the emergency services part first because that is the most dire thing going on. But part of emergency services, emergency housing, right? I just left a press conference about this, where folks that were contracted in prior years have been ripping this county off.
Yeah.
And we're going to put an end to that, too, to make sure that the money stays where it belongs and that we actually help people.
And I think, it's just me thinking out loud, I think it's a little disgusting.
It's very disgusting.
To steal from your government, to say that you're providing services that you're not providing, when in fact people are out there and need these services,
right?
And we're paying to have these services provided,
right?
And you're just scamming, right?
And so they're billing for beds that aren't even full.
Yeah.
And here's the thing: drive down any street, we have a humongous homeless problem. We're not talking about a problem, humongous. Now we're not alone; the whole country's seeing it.
Yep.
However, I am responsible for the county.
Yeah.
I am one of the 18 responsible for the county, and we must make sure that we get our dollars worth out of our vendors and that they're not trying to cheat our government out of money. I think it was $6 million in wasteful spending that we just found, thanks to the controller's office and our friends at Social Services.
Yep.
So we have to address that. I will tell you this: if you steal from our county, the days of lack of oversight are long gone. We're going to fine you. We're going to cancel your contract. And you're going to pay our taxpayers back.
Yeah, and that's it. That's who you stole from.
Yeah.
You didn't steal from the government. You stole from the people that each contribute a little bit every day and throughout the year to make sure that these services can be provided and available for everyone and help with these major issues. You stole from them.
Yep.
That's who you stole from.
And it's not going to be tolerated here in this county. We're going to fine you. And we're going to cancel your contract. And if necessary, we'll prosecute you.
Yeah.
Period.
So AME and other labor unions, we get involved in the political process. We get involved in things like, legislative initiatives and whatever else. But, may not be something that's very familiar to the public. So I want to ask you, how is it that labor unions, ours and others, get involved in legislative initiatives to help get things done?
At the end of the day, people and have had this both sides of this coin flipped on me, right? Why are they getting involved in it, or why are they not getting involved in it? Here's the thing: if I knocked on your door, Dan, and I said I support saving, I'm being fictitious here, saving the whales, and this is something that's important to you, well, then you would want to vote for me because I've said something that's important to you, or I'm doing something that's important to you. More importantly, doing, not saying.
Yeah.
Right. So if you have like incredible men and women of law enforcement that come out and involve themselves, their PAC involves themselves in campaigns, because we need people that are pro-police.
Right.
I know it's crazy,
Yeah,
like it's
right,
groundbreaking,
yeah.
right? But we need people involved that care about our cops,
Right.
care about our county workers, care about the 911 operators. We need people involved in that. So that's why I think people get involved. And it's not necessarily, and listen, it's no great mystery. There are some folks that I did not have a relationship with in the last couple of elections. But again, I still have to work for the county employees.
Yeah.
I still have to make sure that our county services are done.
Right.
So whether they're involved or not, we have to keep moving.
Yeah. And you've involved yourself. I mean, you've grown your relationships. I've seen that out in the world. And what I remind people about, about sometimes when we get involved in political action items, we're focusing on an aspect of an issue, right? And it is about the work and working conditions people are facing, right? So the issue may be any given topic, right? And I remember Assemblyman Joe DiStefano was involved up in Albany with a ton of different initiatives. And there was some things that he wasn't particularly happy about that maybe the other side was trying to advance. But when it came down to issues within that broader topic, when it came down to issues of labor inside of that, even if he disagreed about what's going on around this whole concept, labor was still going to be protected. Because he remembered being part of a labor union, being involved politically, and then, as a fire commissioner, knowing what it means to be engaging in that way. And so we involve ourselves day in and day out, simply looking at an aspect of an issue, which is, how is this affecting labor? How does this affect the work life of the folks doing the work on behalf of Suffolk County?
Right.
So.
And, another aspect that people don't realize is when you overwork somebody, when you're understaffing something, that creates a stress on them. What do you think stress does to the body?
Yep.
You wind up with a bunch of sick calls. Now you're even lower than you started. Right? And so we have to address those issues because it costs us more in overtime than just staffing the spot properly.
And I used to have these arguments with the previous administration when they would put forward a budget that didn't have enough positions in it.
Right.
They would put numbers in there, but they weren't actually funded positions. They weren't going to be able to hire. And I said, listen, you're spending more in overtime than it would to
covering
hire
the spot.
employees. And the employees that you have are stretched thin.
Yep.
People are turning down overtime on account of the fact that they want to see their family and they want to be able to go home and have a meal at a normal hour. And it doesn't always work out that way.
Yep.
But there's a way to balance the books that doesn't break the bank. So.
No, you can't. I mean, we have to be responsible. My job is, one of the legislative job is, they call it the power of the purse, but we have to watch the bottom line.
Yeah.
But we also have to balance that with proper staffing.
Right.
Because the bottom line gets affected when you have people that are unhappy where they work.
Yeah.
Or use every sick day they have because they just can't take it anymore. Right. So.
Right. Yeah. No, it's very important. So I want to just return back to your district real quick. There was some flooding issues that happened back, particularly in December of 2023. And obviously a big impact to the area. And I want to just check in and get an update on how that recovery's been going.
So once again, OEM, Office of Emergency Management, Fire Rescue Emergency Services, was heavily involved in that. I'm proud to say that when the actual flooding happened, because remember, that was supposed to be a passing shower. That's what they predicted, right? When we found out about that, we staffed our OEM office in like 30 minutes. Every spot was full, and we were going. We were moving, right? It's ongoing. I know we plan to put infrastructure money in and possibly use whatever American Rescue Plan money is left, but we're moving that forward. But that did not, the flooding, thank God, did not affect my district on this particular incident. But again, it's a countywide issue, and all of us are concerned about it.
And again, your position as chair of that committee and knowing the work that they do. So I want to thank you on that. So listen, while on paper this job is supposed to be a part-time job, you're 80 hours plus, and again, like sometimes folks may experience that as like, oh, you're just saying the nice thing, but I see you out there, right?
I'm in the streets, Dan. That's where the work is.
Yeah. I see you out there. So, I mean, not a part-time job.
No,
it's not.
No, and I don't do anything else either.
Right.
I don't have another job. My job is a Suffolk County legislator. And I make sure that I fulfill that job every waking moment.
Sure.
And sometimes being woken up from the sleep I get.
Yeah. So I guess lastly, I just want to talk a little bit about a proposition that, again, we got ourselves involved in. It was a labor issue as we saw it. But that was Prop 2 last year, and that was about the clean water initiatives to try and address some sewerage issues across Suffolk County. And so I want to know, now that it's passed, how are you seeing that, kind of come to fruition?
Well, I already have 2 major sewer studies currently in progress and 1 sewer project currently in progress. So I have a sewer feasibility study going on in the community of Medford, and I have a sewer feasibility study going on in the community of Gordon Heights, because we need to help lift that community up. It's been ignored for too long. Meanwhile, we also are working with our town colleagues with the Bellport project, right? The Greater Bellport project, which is the Montauk-Corrie corridor, and building that up. And the county is directly responsible for sewers. We are going to need funding for that. And it's funny because originally, and I'll give it a Reader's Digest, but originally when that came around a year before, I didn't vote for it because I didn't like it wasn't sewer heavy.
Right.
And I wanted sewer heavy. Right now, it's the best way of treating it, right? And recharge basins and things like that. And on this particular round, before it hit the ballot, I actually seconded the motion to put a ballot referendum forward because I was happy with the changeover in the law.
And it was necessary. The matching funds from the state and the federal government really made a big difference here. And so the lift to the taxpayer was probably less in that regard, structuring it the way it is. So sometimes people see good people pushing down on something that they think is a good idea, but it's because it wasn't the best version of that idea, and it could be fixed, and it did get fixed.
And that's what we held out. And listen, I took some lumps for that, but I will always act in the best interest of the taxpayer, and I'll never vote for a project with the word sewer in it that had no sewers.
Right.
So at the end of the day, we're happy to move that forward at this point.
Yeah. So listen, 2025 is going to be an election season, so we're going to talk to you more. We're going to talk about some progress that you've made throughout the year. But, again, it's my hope that you stick around, you keep working, you keep doing the great things that you've been doing for all the residents in Suffolk County, especially those in your district.
Proud to serve and will continue to do so.
Yeah. So my guest this morning was Legislator Dominick Thorne from the 7th District in Suffolk County. Legislator Thorne, thanks again for being with us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, and thank you to our employees that do an outstanding job every day.
Absolutely. And to our listeners, we'll speak to you next week.